now we're going to turn to our Christina Vasquez. She is in Lantana. Christina, what conditions are you dealing with out there?
We were driving by, we're in Lantana, and we just had to stop to share this view because we couldn't quite believe it ourselves. I mean, you really can't tell when you're looking straight on like this where the intercoastal ends and where this parking lot begins. We know from our wonderful weather team as they were getting us all ready for this storm that especially in these low-lying areas that we would see some surface flooding. But I have to tell you, I just spoke to some folks that are from Boynton Beach. Let me orient you if you're not quite sure of this area. So we're in Palm Beach County, and to our right would be Boynton Beach. To our left are those barrier islands that were underneath that mandatory evacuation. The folks in Boynton Beach, they come down to this area quite frequently, and they say they've never seen anything like this. Now, when we are in seasonal high tides and the king tides, they say sometimes you'll see a little surface flooding, but this really shocked a whole lot of people. So many people that it became almost a tourist attraction. I mean, folks were lining up to go into Lantana Bicentennial Park across the way, parking, walking out, taking pictures. So in order to keep everyone safe, the town officials literally just now set up these barriers to keep folks out of this area. If you can look, Brian, I don't know if you can show them where that gazebo is. So on the other side of this in Lantana Bicentennial Park, you can see how the ocean also crested over into the park there as well. We were earlier at the Boynton Inlet, and as we were leaving that area to get a sense of what we could see as we were coming down A1A, there are certain sections of A1A on the barrier island as well where the water has crested onto the street. But again, we haven't seen yet this morning anything quite as dramatic as this. Back to you guys.
I hate to compare, but where you are sort of looks like how Coconut Grove looked during Hurricane Irma, all the flooding they were dealing with, and cars like that and boats. It looks almost similar.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see, especially from these certain perspectives. I mean, one person I spoke to, the mother said she's looking at this and saying to herself, wow, we are so lucky. The first thing she said is, you know, our thoughts are still with everyone in the Bahamas, but to wake up this morning and to see from the rain accumulation that we got and the little bit of storm surge wasn't a direct impact, skirted the coast, and yet you see this much water, right, from the intercoastal coming up on the land. I mean, she really took her breath away. She thought, my goodness, if it would have come any closer, could you imagine the amount of water on our roads? And then her 10-year-old daughter, you guys are going to love this. As a mom, I just thought it was adorable. Looking at this white car you see in the background, she just looked at it and said to me, it looks like the car is drowning. Oh. And so that was, you know, her reaction to it. But it's, you know, it's something to wrap your brain around. This is why all of the preparations are in place. This is why these plans are created. This is why there was a mandatory evacuation, because there's so much science that goes into it. You have a whole team of folks tracking those storms and looking at where it's going to shift. But they know that if it came any closer, let alone a direct impact, even the way it shifted, right? We heard from Julie's forecast this morning. Looking at this, you know, it could have been so much worse. And that's why it's such a great thing that folks prepare. We have those plans in place, and then we extend the information so you can keep yourself safe.
And as we know, hope is not a plan, but based on what you've covered with a lot of folks who are there, do you have the impression a lot of people, in fact, did heed the warnings and they evacuated or just took shelter?
It's a great question, Calvin. We were in Boynton Beach, again, just on the other side of the intercoastal yesterday. And they were telling us, we introduced you to some business owners who are boarding up yesterday, some homeowners, and it was the images coming in from the Bahamas. Even though Palm Beach County had already issued those mandatory evacuations, they knew it was getting serious. It still didn't feel real, they said, until they saw those images from social media coming out from the Bahamas. And they said to themselves, you know what? We don't want to take any chances, so let's go ahead and board up. Then I was over in Palm Beach Shores on Singer Island, and while we were there, that's another area that was under a mandatory evacuation. It wasn't until yesterday afternoon that some folks started evacuating and leaving to friends' houses inland. So I found it surprising at the time that there seemed to be this delayed sense of urgency, but at the end of the day, folks, you know, heeded the warnings, right? And they took the precautions they needed to take. And while we can all now say to ourselves, whew, wow, I'm glad we dodged the bullet, is like kind of the saying you hear around these areas. At the end of the day, had those preparations not been in place, if we not had our first responders and our emergency managers all really working to look ahead, follow those charts, and kind of anticipate what is going to be the public safety threat, then God forbid it would have come any closer or made a direct impact if folks weren't ready. You can imagine the loss of life and property. So it's always great to be in this position. You know, to say to yourself, we prepared, we did everything we had to do,
right.
And here we are, where the biggest news coming out of Lantana is a flooded parking lot going into the intercoastal. That is a wonderful place to be for this community.
It is, and looking at that shot. But after you said that, you know, we sort of dodged a bullet. Do you find that on your way there, you know, across Bicentennial Park, did you find more people kind of out and about or trying to get out of their houses?
Indeed. I mean, that's why they had to close down Bicentennial Park. I mean, when we pulled up here, it was lines of cars, everyone stopping. There was no more parking spaces in the park. So folks were lining up their cars on the side of the street and people streaming out just to walk around and take a look. You know, that we see this often right after we come out of a storm, where folks want to assess the damage for themselves. They want to get a sense of what the area looks like. And in some situations, if the conditions were a little more severe, that would be even more problematic, right? For reasons we all know. And in this case, it's a lot of smiles. I mean, full families, you guys. We have like the viejitos, mom, dad, the kids. They're like walking in groups, all smiles, really just taking it all in and breathing a big sigh of relief.
And we are doing that here too. All right, Christina, we'll talk to you later. Thank you.